Hello, this is Dread. First things off, I want to apologize. I probably sound really groggy right now. That's because I recently woke up because I got a bunch of DMs talking about how the reviews for the Steam store page for Last Epoch recently went from mostly positive to mixed. Now, of course, I've been kind of on vacation for the past few weeks. I've been taking time off to go relax and stuff like that instead of just grinding Last Epoch all day. So I recently came back and I see all this. So we're going to be talking about it today and reading some reviews and saying whether or not they're valid or not, obviously, as someone who has actually played the game. So let's go through these, shall we? All right, I'm going to go to the Steam store page and I'm going to sort them by recent so we can talk about these. So this is the first one. Honestly, I do think it's a decent game. Not finished and new, but it will become good if they care. Giving the review because I typed in chat twice asking if I'm R-word, second time R-word, and both were blocked from chat. This woke blank is stupid. If you're offended by words, then get offline. Big con, overall fun game, good variety, semi-alt friendly. Big cons outside of censoring people, no clan/guild, limited group play, bad UI and MG faction, no good melee, Ward versus life messed up, and smaller things I'll leave alone. So this is the kind of review that I think of whenever I talk about like reviews are kind of worthless on Steam, as of course the user here had a personal run-in with, of course, the the auto moderation in the game chat, which, by the way, like, do people actually use the in-game chat? Like, I always turn it off. I hate the in-game chat because it's filled with people like this. That's why I usually don't have it on. But yeah, stereotypical negative review. This is why I usually don't care if I go to Steam and I see a game mix, because there's a bunch of reviews that are like this. But all of his other points are actually correct, in my opinion. So the bad UI in MG faction, I agree with that. The UI is kind of bad right now. It's very annoying. No good melee. I don't necessarily agree with that. There's a few good melee builds out there. There's significantly less than like range builds, but that's just more of an animation problem currently, because right now there's like this weird molasses kind of gameplay when you're playing a melee build, you're right next to enemies. So like, I'll let that slide. Ward versus life is messed up. That is correct. That is something that is messed up currently. So yeah, that's the first review here. Now the second review that I found, don't get me wrong, I love this game. It's been great fun so far since 1.0, but man, they need to hurry up with some actual changes. Every dev log is just saying the same stuff, that 1.1 will be soon, but it doesn't release by the next month. The game will suffer. Lacking in in-game content right now, and the devs won't address basic things like fixing the MG market and making COF account viable to go. Oh, you mean like COF viable, like a viable end-game option? W game right now, but start actually doing something and moving it forward. Or I'm sorry, this user's grammar is a little bad. Sorry about that. So I do agree. When 1.0 was coming around, I was actually one of the only people that was talking about like, hey, the game doesn't have enough endgame content for 1.0 in my opinion, but everyone shunned me and called me dumb. So it's kind of weird how it's kind of came around. But I don't think like it's necessarily bad the game doesn't have that much content. Like, it has significantly more content than Diablo 4, I'll tell you that much right now. So like it's better in that respect. But I do agree that the end game loop has just a little bit to be lacking. Just a tinge. Like, I'm talking like a very small little upgrade here or there, like would lead the end game to be a lot more enjoyable. So I somewhat agree with this negative review here. All right, with the next negative review, I actually skimmed through it before reading it here. And this person, he made the unfortunate mistake of trying to play an ARPG for the story and, of course, the campaign. So Diablo 4 has a decent story and campaign, but nothing after that. While Last Epoch has a lot after the story and the campaign, but the story and campaign is kind of mid, even in my opinion. But that's just like every ARPG ever played, to be honest. The story was kind of mid. Even when I played Grim Dawn, the story was kind of mid. So I don't think ARPGs are the best places to be looking for stuff like this. Next review. It's fun during normal levels, monoliths, and clearing levels with your choice of gear feels good. But then you meet a boss that one-shots you, and you have to replace all your fun gear with boring stuff just to survive one battle, and that is not fun. I don't know the answer to fix this issue, but it doesn't feel right at the moment. I'm around level 80 on 3 characters. So I believe the problem that he's having is there are certain bosses in Last Epoch currently that require you for your state of gear at that point in the campaign or in the end game, right? You kind of need to move out of the abilities. Like, for instance, the Necrotic Dragon in Reign of Dragons, you have to move out of the beam. It will probably kill you if you're like level 70, right? You know, Lagan, there's that big beam. You have to move out of the beam, otherwise, it will kill you. So, this is just complaining about dying to boss abilities that are supposed to be dodged instead of phase tanked, which, you know, understandable. There are a lot of other things that are problems, so this is just like an review. So this is what I would explain as a non-review. So I do agree that controller support does need a little bit of help. I've seen it and I've tested it. Now, I am not the kind of person to play every game and request controller support. I am a mouse and keyboard lover, and if I'm going to play with a controller, I would rather go play a game that was designed around a controller. Like, I've played plenty of games with a controller. Like, for instance, one of my favorite games of all time, Fable 3, I played with a controller. But whenever I play a game on the computer, right, I'm playing with a mouse and keyboard. So I've never really felt this feeling. And now, of course, it's nice to be able to sit back and play with a controller. But I don't think that, like, this isn't this isn't necessarily number one on the priority list, obviously, and that's why I call it a non-review. All right, so here's another example of what I would call a non-review. The biggest problem of this game is the limited amount of skills you can use. You can only use 5 skills, by the way, not 4 skills at a time, and this isn't nearly enough to experiment with, which it's weird considering, like, there's a lot of people that would disagree with you on that, but whatever. You can modify the skills you're using, basically level up your skills similar to how your character levels up, but most modifications are either really minor or have downsides to them. A lot of them do have downsides to them, but that's because they change the functionality of the skill entirely. Often, I had a skill point and I didn't know where to put it because each upgrade would make my skill worse in some areas. A level up simply doesn't feel all that rewarding, and the enemy design is quite boring, making the gameplay quite dull, at least in the very beginning. And since the story is not really interesting, I didn't see any reason to continue. So this is a few things. First things off, there's been a wave of people asking to be able to use more than 5 skills at once. I don't necessarily think you need more than 5 skills at once. I'm surprised people think that they need to press more than 5 buttons to play every game. I'm going to assume it's like the, like MMO mentality where you have like a billion skills on your hotbar and stuff like that. I feel like 5 is pretty good, especially, considering the current state of the game, right? Now, the other part about the early game, I do agree that the early game is a little like bad in my opinion. There's a reason why everyone who ever plays an RPG skips the campaign. They just rush through it as fast as possible. But the problem with RPGs in general is a lot of the good stuff about them are heavy weighted to the end instead of the early game. So when you have someone like this that only plays for like maybe a few hours at most, they never get to see the good stuff. And this is something that I've been negative about for RPGs in a while. Like, you should, like, I'll be honest, the campaign, it is supposed to be the tutorial, but it's also supposed to be fun. So I kind of agree with half of this negative review here. Even with being relatively new to Diablo-like genre, game fails to give any challenge in the first 25 levels, and according to players in game chat, it won't become any more challenging until high corruption level. It might become interesting at the end game, but it's really tedious to get to that end game. Now, I do agree, it is like, it's the same thing like the last comment here. It's just how ARPGs work. This is just like essentially complaining about the design of RPGs in general. Every RPG is like this. Like, even when I played Diablo 4, it felt like this, where like, it was boring all the way through. It's just, some parts are more boring than others. And, like Path of Exile, like, doesn't really start popping off until endgame either. So this is just like I don't like ARPGs in general, which is fine. I think ARPGs are suffering because of this in general, about the early game being really boring and not that much time being put into them, right? I at least I believe that. So I somewhat agree with this comment here. All right, this one's funny. Not as good as Diablo 4, old graphics. I'll be honest, it's weird whenever the graphics things comes up, because one of my favorite games of all time in the RPG genre right now, and that's going to be Slormancer, has very old, like kind of like pixel based graphics. It's nothing like to sneeze at or anything like that, but it's also not supposed to like make you go, wow, all the funny cinematics and stuff like that, right? And it's actually one of the most in depth games I've ever played ever. And I love Slormancer. I love all these old games. There's like Ghost Lore and stuff like that. Like, I love all these games, right? When it comes to like, I play the game for the systems and stuff like that. I don't necessarily play it for the graphics. I don't need like good graphics. I just need like good enough graphics. And I think Last Epoch hits the good enough graphics. Like, I can see things for the most part. Like, I can, read things. So it's like whatever. This is just a funny review. I thought I'd include it. Too many ranged annoying enemies all the blank time. Not a chill game at all. Oh boy. This is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a while. Obviously, I do agree right now. Part of the end game difficulty in Last Epoch is based on enemies that are ranged and very nasty. There's a lot of endgame enemies that do a very large amount of damage, like Osbric's light mages. You have the Solarum archers. You have a lot of like enemies that can apply poison at a distance, stuff like that. And all these combined makes the gameplay very not chill at all, like for a lot of the time. And I don't mind it because it kind of keeps me on my toes, but I could see why someone would dislike it, because like, I'll be honest, sometimes I do just want to chill, and to do that, I can't do that when there's a bunch of Osprix light mages around and stuff like that, right? So I kind of agree with this comment. I do agree that like sometimes they kind of go overboard, at least on the damage. Like, for instance, you would assume that the melee enemies that walk up to you and hit you would do more damage than the enemies at range, right? Because that's how it's supposed to work. Like, for the ability to hit the player from a distance, you do less damage, but it's more guaranteed, right? While the melee enemies, they gotta walk up to you and actually get to you to hit you, right? At least in theory, that's how it's supposed to work. So it's weird in Last Epoch that all of the most dangerous enemies are range based. So I do somewhat agree with this one. This is definitely something I've been like, this been brooding in the back of my head for a while, but I don't think it'd be enough for a not recommended like review, right? That's like the thing with a lot of these is like, these are like small little annoyances that I agree, but these are also small little annoyances I'd find in like Path of Exile. And I don't feel like as though I would make a whole negative review just because oh no, there's a certain enemy type in Path of Exile that really sucks, right? Like, I wouldn't make a negative review because like DD mobs and stuff like that, which they finally fixed, by the way, for the most part. So it's kind of weird to like make a whole negative review around just such a small little problem. But out of all the small little problems, he definitely chose one of the small little problems that I would agree with here. So I would click the funny button here. All right, and the last review for the bunch: 111 hours as a Necro minion build, level 95. Another 66 as Mage Rune Master build, level 88. I just can't keep with this one shots at the middle of an echo. No matter what resistance I have high, if you don't have ward, you dead. And this is a review that I'm always interested in reading, because it's always like, it's a weird one, because it's like, well, normally, in my opinion, my response would be just to get good, as there are a lot of people that are pushing really high on Necros and Rune Masters right now. And like, they don't really die to random one shots, mainly because of all their defensive layers. And that's just like, I'm not like, I wouldn't like, for instance, if I played a game, right? And I wasn't necessarily good at said game, right? Like, for instance, Synthetic. I play Synthetic a lot. It's a roguelike, but I'm not necessarily what you call good at Synthetic. I don't get that far in it because I just have some fun, right? But I wouldn't make a negative review just because I sucked at the game, right? Like, would you make a review because you sucked at the game? Like, I don't know. It's always a weird thing whenever I see this. So obviously, so like whatever. I thought I'd include this one because I thought it was funny. All right, hopefully this is painting the picture that reviews on Steam are definitely what I would call insanely unreliable currently in the current state of video game culture, as a lot of them are either, oh, I posted something in chat and it got auto moderated, oh, I suck at the game, or oh, the early game sucks and I refunded it in 2 hours, or etc. Right now, there were a lot of good pieces of feedback in these negative reviews, though. That's the thing, right? Like, there's a lot of good pieces, but I don't think any individual one would cause me to make like a negative review on a game. Now, of course, one thing though I will state, the game right now is definitely buggy. I saw a lot of comments talking about how buggy the game is and stuff like that, and I agree with that. Actually, I think that there are an insane amount of bugs currently in Last Epoch, and it's definitely brought my enjoyment of the game down by a few pegs. But it's nothing that I would make a negative review about, like, per se, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm just the kind of person that doesn't like instantly like go rage on the forums every single time like something doesn't go my way or anything. But I would just move on and go do something else usually, right? Now, like I said though, there's like a bunch of connectivity issues. Those are some reviews I didn't include. Those are like just like a dime a dozen at this point. Right now, Last Epoch is currently trying to be an online game, and trying to be an online game is always a chore. So it's like whatever. Obviously, these are problems, but these are problems that will probably get fixed in the future. That like it's like you can't see me right now, but I'm visibly struggling right now. It's just like there's only so much we can do as in general. So, well, all that being said, this has been Dread. Off to go do something else. Bye.